This is Colin O'Keefe of LXBN. Joining me today is Dave Donoghue. Dave is the author of the Chicago IP Litigation blog and also a partner at Holland Knight. Today we're discussing the American Invents Act, which was signed off by President Obama last Friday. Dave, we watched this go through the House in July, and then it moved very quickly through the Senate after the cloture vote, and it passed with huge support. What's your stance on why this moved through so quickly? Was it just that because it was just needed so much and that patent reform just is something that needed to get done?
I don't know if this patent reform needed to get done, but there was a lot of momentum for it. The patent reform is something that's been in the works for years, seriously for 3 or 4 years, and close to a decade off and on before that. So on the one hand, it was slow, but it went quickly once it arrived. Mm-hmm. And it's also important to remember that the House first passed its version of the bill that Obama just signed, in April. The Senate then voted a different version of the bill through its system. And after a long summer recess, they decided to send the House bill back to the Senate instead of fixing it in committee, in part because there was a big issue over fee diversion from the PTO.
I see. One of the things that we often hear about when it comes to patent reform and why we need it is, the term often comes up are patent trolls, people who pursue this litigation, and they're often called sometimes, just this tax on innovation, kind of slowing things down, preventing people from doing things. Does the American Invents Act, do you think it tackles these patent trolls and the litigation that arises? Does it do that effectively? And do you think we'll see, less of this litigation going on, or is it really not going to have too much of an impact?
Absolutely not. It does virtually nothing to deal with the patent trolls. I actually wrote about this on my Retail Patent Litigation blog, as well as my Chicago blog. The one thing that it does is it limits trolls from filing suits against multiple unrelated parties, but they're still free to file 100 suits against 100 unrelated parties at the same time. Mm-hmm. And they will probably get consolidated for discovery purposes. So ultimately, very little has changed on the troll landscape. Nice. Having said that, in the days leading up to Obama signing the bill on Friday, there was a huge rush in filing multiple defendant patent troll cases.
I see. Just people trying to get in there as soon as at the last moment, kind of.
Right.
One of the big parts of it, of course, is the first to file, moving from first to invent to first to file to kind of match the rest of the world's, their patent standards. And that there's been a lot of concern about how this impacts, smaller inventors and smaller entrepreneurs, and whether or not they can afford to get to patent as quickly, or whether or not larger companies are going to be able to swallow up those ideas and then be able to patent more quickly. What are your thoughts on that? Is this going to have a negative impact on those, those smaller inventors and those smaller entrepreneurs?
It may have some, but I think it's going to have a balanced effect in that regard. I mean, you pointed out that the first to file system brings us in line with the rest of the world. The U.S. signed a treaty years ago saying that it would go to first to file, and it never has. And so there is some value in consistency. That value probably benefits large companies with larger portfolios more. But a small inventor who gets an idea and gets it on file is going to get that same benefit. And many of them do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I see. Just what do you think is the most impactful part of this act? What do you think are the kind of the positive points to draw out of it? And, what are you telling your clients, or what are you relaying to people that they need to be most alert of, or what they need to be most aware, or if they need to change what they're doing or not?
Well, first to file is big. You really need to move more quickly on your invention. It used to be that as long as you were going diligently towards reducing your invention to practice and patenting, you were pretty safe because you always had the ability to swear behind your filing date. Now there's less of an ability to do that. That's key. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I think is very significant is there's now a prior user defense, or there will be, which means if you can show that you were doing the patented invention before the filing date, even if it's not exactly prior art, you're going to be free to continue doing it.
I see.
So one of the things you need to do is write down your processes, describe your inventions and disclosure documents. Whether you publicize them or not, it will create some significant protections for things that you're doing long term.
I see. I see. That makes sense. That makes sense. That's most of the questions that I have. I just wanted to toss a couple quick ones your way. Is there anything else you'd like to add on the American Invents Act?
No, I think we hit the big things.
I want to say thanks again to Dave Donoghue for joining us today, and also for more on the American Invents Act, be sure to check out lxbn.lexblog.com, and also Dave's two blogs, the Retail Patent Litigation blog and also the Chicago IP Litigation blog.